Today, we praise being smart with money and cutting costs. But back in the Great Depression, people survived with skills so extreme, they now feel almost forbidden. They didn't just save, they broke every spending rule we know. Imagine making your own laundry soap or stretching one food item into 10 meals. These weren't just clever tricks, these were acts of pure defiance against a system that wanted you to buy, buy, buy. They challenge everything you think you know about money and what's truly allowed. Number 1. Foraging wild edible plants. When there was absolutely no money for groceries, people turned to the original supermarket, nature itself. Suddenly, the weeds growing in your yard weren't just weeds anymore. Families learned to identify and gather edible plants like dandelions, wild onions, and even cattails. This wasn't a trendy hobby, it was a crucial way to get food on the table. And this stuff wasn't just filler. Dandelion greens are packed with vitamins, but today, just try walking into a city park and start digging up plants. You'd probably get stopped since foraging is now regulated or even illegal in many public spaces. Finding free food was one thing, but what happened when you couldn't afford to buy even the most basic household supplies? Number 2. Repairing clothes instead of replacing them. When you couldn't afford new clothes, you had one option: make the ones you owned last forever. This was the make do and mend philosophy. A ripped shirt wasn't trash, it was a project. A hole in a sock wasn't a reason to toss it. You learned how to darn it. This was a basic, essential household skill. It's a huge contrast to today's fast fashion. Back then, clothes were actually made to be durable, so fixing them was worth the effort. Now, our cheap clothes often fall apart so fast, mending them feels pointless. Saving fabric was one thing, but people had to save absolutely everything. And that led to some truly surprising inventions. Number 3. Keeping backyard chickens. When buying food wasn't an option, people turned their backyards into tiny farms. And the star of the show was the humble chicken. Keeping a few hens was a game changer. It meant a constant supply of fresh eggs, a reliable source of protein right outside your door. This wasn't a hobby. It was the ultimate form of food security. This idea is making a huge comeback today, but here's the twist. What was once a simple survival tactic can now get you in trouble. Many towns and neighborhood associations have rules that strictly forbid it. Just trying to have fresh eggs can feel like a rebellious act. Securing your own food was one thing, but what about keeping your home and family clean? Number 4. Bartering goods and services. When cash simply vanished, people created their own economy. Suddenly, your skills were your new currency. A doctor might trade a house call for having their roof repaired. A seamstress could mend a family's clothes in exchange for a bag of potatoes from their garden. This system wasn't just about swapping goods. It was a powerful network built on trust and what you could do for your neighbor. But here's where it gets tricky today. The IRS considers bartering taxable income. That free website you designed for a friend in exchange for a vacation stay? Technically, you're supposed to report its value. What was once a community lifeline now feels like navigating a legal minefield. This ingenuity wasn't just about trading. It was also about making things no one could afford. Number 5. Saving and reusing every container. Think about how fast we toss out a takeout box or a plastic tub. During the Depression, that was just unthinkable. Nothing was garbage. Every glass jar was washed and saved for canning or used as a drinking glass. Tin cans could become scoops or planters. Even fabric flour sacks were carefully cleaned and stitched into everything from dish towels to children's clothes. This wasn't some trendy zero-waste lifestyle, it was just how you survived. In today's world of single-use convenience, this mindset feels almost rebellious. But making do didn't stop there. Number 6. Home canning and food preservation. If you managed to grow a garden, you couldn't afford to waste a single bit of it. Canning wasn't a cute hobby, it was your family's insurance policy against going hungry. People spent entire weeks preserving everything they grew because that food had to last them all winter. There were no supermarkets with fresh vegetables in February. A pantry stacked high with jars was like a vault full of treasure. Today, the idea of living off your own preserved food for months without just buying more seems incredibly rebellious, almost risky. But keeping food on the table was only half the battle. Number 7. Collecting scrap materials for reuse. In a world with no money, the very idea of trash basically disappeared. Throwing something away was a luxury almost no one could afford. Every single item was looked at for its future potential. A shirt that was too worn to wear wasn't garbage. It became a future supply of cleaning rags, patches for other clothes, or squares for a new quilt. People saved absolutely everything because you never knew what you might need for a repair down the road. Today we might call it upcycling, but back then it was just surviving. And this incredible resourcefulness wasn't just for fixing things. Number 8. Growing large victory gardens. This resourcefulness went beyond just saving things. It was about creating what you needed from scratch. During the Depression, growing your own food wasn't a cute weekend hobby. It was a full-time job. People tore up their front lawns and turned every available patch of dirt into a mini farm. This was about survival, plain and simple. In fact, so many people left city jobs to go back to family farms that the rural population actually grew. Today, the idea of replacing your entire lawn with potatoes and corn seems extreme. Back then, it was just common sense. But growing all that food created a whole new challenge. Number 9. Making household cleaners from basic ingredients. Keeping the house running was just as hard as keeping it fed. With millions of people out of work, buying specialized cleaning products was completely out of the question. So people made their own. You've probably seen modern DIY trends using vinegar and baking soda. Well, that wasn't a cute life hack back then. It was just the all-purpose cleaner. Laundry soap was often made at home with simple ingredients like borax. This wasn't a choice, it was survival. Today, we have a multi-billion-dollar industry for cleaning supplies, but back then a few simple items did it all. But keeping the house clean was one thing. Keeping yourself healthy was another battle entirely. Number 10. Hunting small game for food. Getting enough to eat was a constant struggle, and meat was an impossible luxury for most. For families in rural areas, or those who had to move back to the family farm, hunting wasn't a sport. It was a way to put protein on the table. Skills that had been passed down for generations were suddenly essential again. Hunting small game like rabbits and squirrels provided a free, reliable source of food when store shelves were empty and pockets were emptier. Today, hunting is surrounded by licenses and regulations, but back then it was simply survival. But providing food was just one part of the puzzle. What happened when you needed other basic supplies you just couldn't buy? Number 11. Sharing housing with extended family. Losing your job often meant losing your home right after. With no unemployment checks to fall back on, people had one last resort: family. It was incredibly common to squeeze in with relatives, packing multiple generations under one roof. In fact, so many people left the cities to go back to the family farm that the farm population actually grew during the Depression. It wasn't a choice, it was survival. You pooled your money, shared food, and helped each other get by. Having a roof over your head was one thing, but what happened when you actually got sick? Number 12. Repairing tools rather than buying new ones. Today, if something breaks, our first thought is usually to just buy a new one. But during the Depression, that just wasn't an option. Everything from a shovel to a pair of socks was made to last, and more importantly, it was made to be repaired. It was a totally different mindset. Someone shared a perfect example from their grandparents. It made sense to darn a sock when it was knit with tough wool. Why bother fixing a cheap modern sock that's just going to get another hole tomorrow? This was a culture of repair, not replacement. And looking back at all these forgotten skills, it really makes you wonder. These aren't just old stories about surviving tough times. These 12 skills were pure defiance against a system that wanted people to buy. From growing your own food to fixing every last sock, these simple acts now feel almost rebellious.